23, we are live on Swing State Update right now. I'm Austin Smith, your co-host. We have a lot to cover. The Iowa caucuses happening right now, first in the nation. Hundreds of precinct locations across the state. Voters are going to be appearing there to decide who they want to be the Republican nominee, the next president of the United States. These voters are going to show up, make their voices heard. We have a lot to cover today. We've got a couple special guests with us. Information as it pours in through this episode, we're going to give it to you guys. You get it no other place like you will here at Swing State Update and Turning Point Action. President Trump obviously leading many of the polls in Iowa pre-caucus all year long. Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley vying it out in second place for most of the time. Vivek Ramaswamy also barnstorming across all 99 counties. We have so much to cover. Charlie Kirk talking about the Iowa caucuses. Human Events talking about the Iowa caucuses. There's a lot going on. We're going to have so much information for you guys. And first, I wanted to introduce a very special guest, an excellent rock star field representative for us in the Hawkeye State, Mr. John Trotta. John, welcome to Swing State Update.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So you're an Iowa guy, you know, you go to school there, you're working for us on the field all year long at Turning Point Action. You helped us, organize our efforts at the Iowa State Fair this year, where we recruited hundreds of Central Committee members to get them lined up for the caucus. What's going on the ground right now in Iowa? What have you seen the last couple days leading up to the caucus? Because you guys just had a huge ice and snowstorm come through. What do you think tonight's going to look like?
Yeah, it's been a weird winter for us in Iowa. We didn't really have a lot of snow in December, and then these past week and a half, we've just been in a blizzard. So it's freezing. It's -3 degrees right now. Feels like -20. So that's hindered a lot of campaigns, actually, particularly Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. But Trump, he's been doing some big events here, and Vivek, he hasn't canceled any events. He's been pushing. I was at one of his events last week, and they said that this was Vivek's 360th campaign stop, which is more than all the other campaigns combined. So Vivek is certainly putting in the work, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people tonight.
I tend to agree with you. I think Vivek is going to come a lot closer in second or third place than Ron DeSantis. And I say that because, yes, he's done over 300-something plus events in Iowa. We've been in Iowa. You've been all over the state, recruiting Central Committee members, talking about Chase the Vote, registering new voters. You and the rest of the Iowa team are constantly out there. And one thing that I've heard is Vivek has been everywhere. Obviously, it's a little bit harder to move a president across the state. We saw President Trump a few weeks ago in Iowa, and that's a whole ordeal trying to move a president. But some of these smaller campaigns like Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis and Vivek, they can move a lot quicker. In Iowa, being the small state that it is, you have 99 counties, and that's a lot of ground to cover. And typically a state like Iowa, going into the caucus this time of the year where there's a lot of snow, and some people like to talk about that being a deterrent for people to show up at the polls, at their caucus place. What are you hearing on the ground? Is any of that weather going to deter people from turning out tonight?
I really don't think it is going to. I think people that really like their candidate are going to go out there. There's reports that, it's going to hurt Trump more because his supporters are elderly. I would tend to disagree. I think it's going to help Trump even more because Trump is the only candidate that has those passionate supporters. I think people are going to go out for Trump very heavily. You have people like Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, and Vivek. People aren't as excited to see them or vote for them as they are for Trump. I think in the long run, the weather is going to help Trump a lot. People that really care about this country, though, they're gonna show up. There's so many different locations. Mine's just 3 minutes down the road from me. It's not a far drive. The plows have been out. I think we'll have a good showing, and it might be record-breaking showing.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it will be record-breaking. One, for where the state of the country is right now. Two, what's happened to Donald Trump in the last year or so with the political persecution of himself. And I think that's going to be a huge get out the vote factor for a lot of people in Iowa. And obviously, it's not like New Hampshire. Iowa is much more, it's the same as the retail politics, showing up at diners, showing up at mom and pop places, going to events, meeting with farmers, meeting with industry leaders there. That makes a really big difference. But at the same time, Donald Trump is such a big figure that a lot of people, will show up at these rallies, at these events, and stand out in the cold for a few hours. We were talking to Gloria last week where people waited outside in freezing temperatures, for 2 or 3 hours just to get a glimpse or to get a standing room only area for them to watch Donald Trump. So I think you're right on the money about that. Can we go ahead and play clip 1 of Charlie talking about the Iowa caucus?
Because resources are limited. The general election is what we're all focused on. We have to win. We have to win. And the election is more than candidate selection. It's about machinery. And our machinery is lacking in sophistication. It is lacking in funding. The RNC is completely out of control. They do not have the resources. They do not have the money. And the allocation of these scarce resources are key. So tonight we're going to learn a lot. Typically, caucuses are very, very tight. Polling shows that Donald Trump is up significantly. I'm a little afraid about that. Iowa is a tough place to poll, but I think based on everything I've been hearing on the ground that Trump's going to have a good night. If Trump wins by more than 10 points, that should be the end of the primary. Understand, the regime media, and I'm going to talk about Nimrata throughout this hour. It's very important. There's 2 elements to the Nimrata thing, which is they're going to try to create New Hampshire to be the real start of the primary. They're going to say, oh, my goodness, no, the Iowa, this is what they're going to say. I guarantee it. Iowa picks corn and New Hampshire picks presidents. They're going to try to reframe the entire thing. And let's go to New Hampshire because Nikki is going to do better in New Hampshire than Iowa. And then they're going to try to go to South Carolina, the state that she was the former governor. The sooner we can end this primary, the sooner we can deploy these scarce resources towards a general election. I have an extra pep in my step today, though, because today is the beginning. It's a day I have been hoping and wishing and praying for because I have had a bad taste in my mouth. I have had a pit in my stomach for well over 3 years.
He's absolutely right. This has been 3 years in the making. Our country has been obliterated by the Biden regime, by political persecutions, by this economy that's going up in flames, inflation through the roof. Our enemies don't respect us. Iowa is the first state in the country that gets to get this right. Now, I understand that, primaries can be helpful in making a candidate stronger. But over the past year, you cannot sit there and tell me that the vast majority of Republican voters in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Nevada, Pennsylvania, everywhere it comes down to 270 to win, that these voters aren't more upset today than they were in 2020. The country looks a heck of a lot different than it did 4 years ago, arguably worse. And so I think what's going to happen today is Donald Trump will win by 10 or more points in the Iowa caucus. And when he wins by 10 or more points, the media will say, well, he should have won by 20, that there's not enough energy or enthusiasm behind Donald Trump. That couldn't be further from the truth. We need everybody in Iowa that's listening within the sound of my voice. If you haven't decided if you're going to caucus or not, go caucus. Find out exactly where you need to be. Because this is going to set the stage for the rest of the election cycle. The left has built the infrastructure that they need to win. They have the backing. They have the organization. We are desperately needing that on our side on the right. And we don't have it yet. And so when Donald Trump wins tonight by 10 or more, I think he's going to win by 20 or more. That's my prediction. And then we're going to go into New Hampshire, and they're going to say Nikki Haley, who probably will come in second tonight, maybe Vivek, that the only chance of stopping Donald Trump is going to be here in New Hampshire. We've got to be laser focused on that general election, folks. Everything comes down to after tonight. Raising money, chasing ballots, getting out the vote, updating and cleaning the voter rolls, and all of the target swing states. That's what's going to make the difference at the end of the day. John, in Iowa right now, people are probably leaving their houses, driving to where they need to be to go to a caucus. I want to ask you, what does a caucus typically look like in Iowa? Some people at home, maybe your state does do a caucus, but what does a caucus night look like in Iowa when you leave your house?
It's a really simple process, actually. It's a pretty informal thing. I'm only 20 years old. This is my first caucus, and I'm really excited for it. Typically, it's in a gym or just a large community area. Um, you'll walk in. There'll be representatives, caucus captains they're called, for each candidate. They'll give a small talk on why you should vote for that candidate. Then typically you'll fill out a sheet of paper. Sometimes it says informal as, okay, everyone that's going to vote for Donald Trump, go to this corner. Everybody that's going to vote for Vivek, go to this corner. They'll count heads and then they'll upload it live.
So, I mean, most of Iowa, it's a rural state, but you do have some of your larger cities like Sioux City, Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, Davenport. Those are some of the larger cities in the state of Iowa. Then you have the rural areas, the smaller towns, the smaller communities, where a big chunk of that vote goes in. So I imagine the smaller precincts, the smaller areas where they caucus, that will come in fairly quickly. And I know they report that to the state party. That stuff gets published online. So the bigger ones may take all night. Do you think that the smaller ones are going to have a more than normal turnout for Republican voters? I know Iowa is like a day of registration, so you can pretty much show up, and if you're an independent voter or you're not registered, you can show up and become a registered voter. Do you think that it's going to have more like traditional Republicans showing up, or do you think there's going to be more people showing up that are, pretty disenfranchised with either party, but they want to caucus for Donald Trump? What do you think?
I think we're going to have a lot of new first-time caucusers this election, especially in those smaller towns. I think, they get a little overshadowed. We look at the big cities in Iowa, but we don't look at these rural communities, and they're very, very pro-Trump. If you drive down the highway, it's impossible to drive a couple miles without seeing a Donald Trump sign in somebody's farm. I think the rural communities are going to show out, again, like I said earlier, record numbers. The only concern for these smaller towns is the quality of the roads. Are the roads as good? The places that don't have access to those big snowplows. But these people, they love their country. And a little bit of snow, a little bit of cold, it's not going to scare any Iowans off that love America. And I can't wait to see the results tonight. And I will be looking in those small precincts in those small towns, and I think they're going to vote in record numbers.
Between Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Vivek, those are the only four candidates that really are going to matter tonight. Chris Christie dropped out. Asa Hutchinson doesn't really have a chance. On the Democrat side, nobody stepped up to obviously challenge Joe Biden in Iowa other than RFK. Do you think that RFK might have a solid showing tonight in some areas? I don't think he's going to overperform Biden, but do you think there'll be a good turnout on the ground for RFK in Iowa?
From what I've seen on the ground, I don't think so. I spoke to a lot of people that really like RFK. Everyone I spoke to that likes RFK, they're Trump supporters. They're going to vote Trump. I know RFK's done some campaign work. He hasn't really been in Iowa a lot. He hasn't made his presence known super to a lot of people in Iowa. So I really don't think RFK is going to have a great night tonight at the caucus. Not to say that people don't like RFK, they just view him as someone that's an alternative to Trump, and no one's going to turn on Trump for RFK here in Iowa, at least. That's what I've seen on the ground.
Yeah, I think what's going to be important here tonight for Democrats that turn out in the Iowa caucus, obviously enthusiasm is down on the Democrat side for Joe Biden. You can hear people talk about, no, we're going to run with Joe Biden. This is our guy. He can beat Donald Trump. He did it in the past. He beat Donald Trump before. A state like Iowa is probably not going to go for the Democrat in 2024. I know in the past it went for Barack Obama, and it's a state that's kind of been all over the place. Now you have four Republican members of Congress. The state has changed a lot. And I think what's important to remember about Iowa is that Iowa, being one of those Midwest states, only having the 6 electoral votes, really doesn't make that big of a difference for us 270 to win. However, those people in Iowa, being the first in the nation, really get to set the tone for how we expect our nominee to be in the future. So Iowa, like Charlie was talking about, somebody says, Iowa picks corn, New Hampshire picks presidents. I don't really accept it. I think Donald Trump will be the first one to win Iowa, and he will go on to win New Hampshire. And I say that because after 2016, Ted Cruz won that. They spent a lot of money in Iowa. The Ted Cruz campaign did in 2015, 2016. He rode in on an evangelical vote. Donald Trump, I believe came in second. Ted Cruz just barely eked him out in Iowa. That's a lot different now. The country's changed. The vast majority, I think, of Republican voters, not just in Iowa, but across the country, the party is more pro-Trump than it ever has been before. Iowa's going to set the stage going into New Hampshire. And like I said, the media is going to say, you know, Trump, because he didn't break 15, because he didn't break 20, it's still plausible that Nikki Haley can go on and win New Hampshire, that DeSantis can win New Hampshire, and then it'll be a battleground into South Carolina and obviously the Nevada caucuses and Super Tuesday. My prediction, Donald Trump wins by more than 20 or at 20% in the Iowa caucuses, goes into New Hampshire. If DeSantis is not the guy in second place and it's Nikki Haley, DeSantis jumps out. Maybe he'll endorse Trump, maybe not right away. They probably got to lick his wounds a little bit. But like what Charlie was talking about, this first one, if Trump's up by 20, if he garners a bunch of new Republican votes, I'm sure we'll get that data one way or another in the next couple of days, if they're new Republican voters, if these are traditionally historical Republican voters. We're going to find out. Iowa's a little bit different because I remember like in 2008, Mike Huckabee won it, but John McCain went on to be the nominee. 2012, Rick Santorum won Iowa by just a few hundred, by a couple, I think it was just by like 200 something votes. I don't remember the exact number, but it was very close. Going to 2016, Ted Cruz wins it, but Donald Trump becomes the nominee. I think this will be the first time ever, because of new Republican voters and traditional Republican voters like you're talking about in Iowa, the people that are independents or people who like RFK are actually going to caucus for Trump. Can we get, before we're going to get Tyler to jump on here with us in a little bit, can we get clip 2 from Fox with Trump leading the Iowa caucus?
Got it.
Well, we have some clues about it, and that in terms of people's having their mind made up and their enthusiasm and commitment to go to caucus, Donald Trump is far superior on the enthusiasm front. 49% of his supporters who choose him as their first choice say they're extremely enthusiastic. By comparison, it's just 23% for Ron DeSantis. That's less than half what Trump gets. And for Nikki Haley, it's 9%.
Wow. I have to agree with that. People are going to crawl across shattered glass and obviously ice to go and caucus for Donald Trump right now. And it's something we've been talking about for months, since Trump officially declared that he was running again, since the indictment the first time. I think there was a point where, DeSantis was in not striking distance, but he was close. And he was staying in that second place range where people didn't know if they wanted to go with Trump or if they wanted to go with DeSantis, because DeSantis has a good record as a governor. Fast forward to the Iowa caucus. The political persecution gets worse on Donald Trump. He stays in Iowa. DeSantis stays in Iowa. And the argument from the DeSantis side and the Haley side is Trump's not going to be able to defend himself against a lot of these attacks from the DOJ, paying his legal bills, going to court, trying to keep himself on the ballot. It's going to be too much. I know the governor in Iowa, Reynolds, has said that a lot, that we got to start thinking about the future. Well, my belief is that it doesn't matter if it's Donald Trump on the ballot, if it was Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley, that we are so vastly underorganized and financed compared to the left that we're still in a really rough spot when it comes to these battleground states. The only difference is that the enthusiasm for Trump, I believe, in 2024 is higher than it is in 2020. Iowa, I believe, will prove that for us tonight. John, when you're there every single week talking about, when you go to these caucus events, and I know you've gone to some Vivek events and Trump events, and you really know the ground there. Do you think the enthusiasm for Trump is higher this time around than it has ever been before in Iowa?
I don't think people have ever been more excited to go out and see Donald Trump. I think that his enthusiasm is higher than any other candidate out there. I've met far more Trump supporters than anyone else. Granted, I've met DeSantis supporters. I met Vivek supporters. I haven't met any Haley supporters, actually, which is why I find those polls difficult to believe. But Trump is he's the king. He is at the top of the polls. I don't think anyone's going to catch him. I don't think the enthusiasm's there. If you look at the candidates based on voter enthusiasm, Trump's number 1, Vivek's number 2. People aren't excited to see Ron DeSantis. People aren't excited to see Nikki Haley. That's just the facts of what's going on down here in Iowa. The people have never been more excited to support Donald Trump and to vote for Donald Trump.
And we are 45 minutes out from the time the caucuses start. 45 minutes, the Iowa caucuses start. And you're absolutely right about this. Vivek ran the campaign that Ron DeSantis was supposed to. Now he's appearing as an alternative to Trump. This is the same thing that happened to Ted Cruz in 2016, where he was swimming between that island between pro-Trump and not pro-Trump. Vivek hasn't done that, and DeSantis has floundered. He's starting to sink. I mean, changes in his PAC leadership. Most of his campaign leadership has stayed the same. Nikki Haley 100% took that establishment lane, took the establishment money, is trying to run this campaign in Iowa that, she is a better alternative to Trump. She's more conservative. She's going to get the job done. But Republican Party, caucus voters, primary voters are not easily fooled and swayed. People pay much more attention to Republican Party politics and their primary choices than ever before. And I think you're going to see that tonight. I think Vivek will do very well. I'm going to bring Tyler Boyer in here. Tyler's going to be joining us live for the Iowa caucus results right now. Tyler, how you doing, man?
Oh, muted. Hey, what's up, Austin? How are we doing today, guys?
Tyler, we are 45 minutes out from the caucus happening in Iowa. My prediction is Trump's going to win by 20. What do you think?
Yeah, and just as a plug for those that are listening online right now, as we're live, we're going to be going live with Charlie Kirk and Jack Posobiec here in about an hour and a half. We'll be going live. So we'll be reading results. And so we'll be going to John and the rest of our team that's on the ground to talk Iowa. And we'll be talking with, everybody that's on the ground right now, just seeing things as it comes in. But, right now it sounds like from what we're hearing and everything that as we're seeing everybody start to assemble in their various caucuses, is that it looks like Donald Trump should have probably a 30-point win or above. Most everybody's saying, yeah, it's looking like a third or more is clearly caucusing for Trump in most of these places. It really is going to depend on how many Democrats show up for Nikki Haley or not, right? So we talked about this, tweeted this out yesterday. Americans for Prosperity, which is the Koch network's grassroots organizing face, who's really suffered over the past 3 or 4 years, where they've just really dropped off the map, mainly because of things like this, like endorsing people like Nikki Haley. Their name of the game is they go out and they basically try to re-register left-leaning independents, people who hate conservatives, Donald Trump, and individuals who are Democrats in some states where you have same-day voter registration, and they get them re-registered to go vote for their candidate of choice. Why? Because it's easier to get someone like that at the door to go support your candidate than try to convince a conservative to support their candidate, right? So if I'm at the door and I knock on a door and it's a conservative, they're never going to support Nikki Haley, right? They're never going to do it. So it's much easier for them to go to Democrats. Well, why is this bad? This is really, really bad for the Republican Party in general, because what they do is they re-register these people same day as Republicans, and then a lot of them stick around as Republicans. They'll re-register back to Democrat. Why? Because they don't care about their primary, maybe, or they're just going to vote for the Democrat in the general. And then all of a sudden, when it comes to ballot chasing and ballot and early vote chase and absentee ballot chasing, you've got all these Democrats now masquerading as Republicans because organizations like AFP re-registered them to support Nikki Haley. It's so disgusting. It's so bad. It's so terrible for the movement, and it's got to stop. And the Democrats would never allow that kind of stuff to happen, is to register Republicans to support a more moderate candidate on their side. This just doesn't happen.
What's really eye-opening now, and I'm sure we'll see it in these next filings, how much AFP actually spent in this primary to prop Haley up. If it's $4 or $5 million, if it's $10 million, we don't know how much they spent. We can look it up. And Charlie talked about it earlier, Tyler, before you came on, is that yes, we're going to find out, where the vast majority of primary voters are tonight, which I believe, 70+% across the country are with Donald Trump. I think Iowa's going to be a great example of that. But the infrastructure, the fundraising, the coordination, the organization, AFP just wasted a bunch of that money trying to prop up Nikki Haley, messing up with voter registration, stirring the pot a little bit amongst the Republican Party voters in Iowa. Then we're going to go into New Hampshire, South Carolina, and it's pretty much over after that, when after Iowa, this is when it's the job of the party and all these other campaigns that don't have a shot. Get out. Tell your donors to stop donating money to you. Redirect that to organizations that are going to be ballot chasing, that are going to be registering voters, that are going to be working on the election integrity lawfare, cleaning up voter rolls, everything that goes into having a successful election after the caucus. We're still a step behind it. So we'll see. I think
Yep.
if Ron DeSantis, decides to jump. Yeah, here, look. Nikki Haley aims for second place with Koch Group's $70 million. $70 million. That's an absurd amount of money for her to probably come in third tonight, maybe second. I don't know, but that could have been used to be banked for voter registration in Arizona.
Well, the scary part about this whole thing is they're aiming to get her into second place, which was to eclipse Ron DeSantis, right? Because Ron DeSantis has run arguably one of the most historically bad campaigns ever in the history of maybe next to Jeb Bush. Jeb got out, pretty early too. So, but this is, I don't know what it is with governors from Florida and running bad campaigns, but I mean, just such a bad campaign. And that's not to say that, Ron DeSantis is a bad dude or, that, he wouldn't be great. I don't know. That's TBD, right? But he ran a terrible campaign and the numbers are showing that. But Nikki Haley's job in this role here, being supported by really the worst of the worst, re-registering Democrats to support her or etc., is the whole name of the game was to get her into second place, which second place in this case may be, 15%. It might be 18%. It might be 20%, right? Like, so, there's a chance that she may not even break 20% in Iowa. And that would spell, I think, really bad for the movement because, there shouldn't be this argument for her as VP. She is counterintuitive to MAGA. She's counterintuitive to the Trump idea. She's really supported by everyone who effectively hates you in the grassroots. And so, yeah, she's just, that would be horrible. More importantly is, she has a real propensity to go out, and I think the bigger her support gets, is the more that she's going to try to take away from Trump potentially during the general. And we've seen this classically displayed in many places. It happened here in Arizona against Kari Lake running for governor. There's an entire brand of Republican that's not really at the epicenter, the heart of Republicanism, what the party is today, conservatism, what it is today. And when they don't get the nomination and they don't get the VP nomination and then they kind of take their ball and go home, and it actually helped Democrats. And that's what we saw here in Arizona was, entire subset, a group of very similar people to this that are supported by the Chamber of Commerce, that were also big Koch people that worked against Kari Lake here in Arizona. And not only did they work against her, but they supported Democrats along the way and supported Democrat proposals on the ballot that turned out more Democrats. And that didn't just hurt Kari Lake, that hurt everybody all the way down ticket, all across the state of Arizona. So this is the same thing with the same-day voter registration issue in Iowa. When you re-register Democrats as Republicans, just the caucus, you're now hurting the guy running for school board in Des Moines.
Right.
You're hurting, you're hurting everyone all the way across in Iowa City. These battles that our young people are having, near campus. You're fighting battles that you never should have intended to fight, because now we are having to spend more time on selective data. And so that's a real issue that's with this brand of Republican that's trying to just come in second place and spending tens of millions of dollars that could be used much more wisely to win for the Republican Party. Is that they're really not just spending money frivolously in an effort that's not going to win. They're actually hurting the party on the data front. They're hurting the party. They're hurting the lower tier candidates all the way down ballot. And that's something you won't hear from anyone else. You won't hear on any other podcast. You won't see it on any other Twitter feed about how Nikki Haley and this ploy is hurting everyone down to the grassroots level, hurting. And that's really, really despicable.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think about Marionette Miller Meeks when in 2020, when we were there, Super Saturday in Iowa, at the University of Iowa. And we were the only group on the ground working to get Trump elected and Marionette Miller Meeks. And she won by 6 votes. And I say that because the voter registration, obviously, if you get a place like Iowa where Nikki Haley and those folks, I think it's now the 2nd congressional district. It's changed a little bit, obviously, after redistricting. But if the map would have stayed the same and you've got people from AFP and the Nikki Haley campaign getting all these Democrats at the university there to quickly register as Republicans because they're in school right now, and then they go and caucus and it's like, oh, well, Nikki Haley did a really great job because they ended up getting more Republicans to come caucus for her in this area. It impacts everybody down ballot. It impacts the school board guys. It impacts, the college Republicans chapters there. It impacts, the overall data for Iowa. We were talking earlier before you got on, Tyler, Barack Obama winning Iowa in the past, Mitt Romney being able to win it in 2012. Obviously, Trump comes in 2016 and 2020 wins it. So it's on the right trajectory, I believe, in Iowa. The state has gotten much more conservative than it has been swing. But when you look at the overall picture of the Midwest, they just wasted a bunch of money in Iowa to re-register voters when that money can be spent in better places, like right across the border, right there in Wisconsin, where we desperately need, $70 million to clean up voter rolls in Wisconsin, to make sure that that they're doing the right election integrity move there. And they just wasted a bunch of it on getting people that were, low propensity or soft Democrats or even hard Democrats to go campaign for Nikki Haley at the Iowa caucus. I think that's such a bad stain on these campaigns that do stuff like that, because that's telling me that it's about you and not the movement, right? At Action, we always talk about the movement before me. And my belief is that there's a lot of these consultants, and you brought up Ron DeSantis running arguably the worst campaign, since probably Jeb Bush. And I agree with that, because Ron DeSantis was such an effective governor. He, really attached himself to the right people. He did the right things. And then sometimes these people just run for president. And I don't know if it's Trump derangement syndrome or some of these consultants and these lobbyists who were just constantly had a feeding trough before them. And now Ron DeSantis is running for president and got all these bad guys to run the pack, to be maybe not so much part of the campaign, but just really bad people attach themselves to these candidates. And I don't know if it's about getting a paycheck or, the power struggle that's there. And all that's just now been wasted in Iowa for Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. Now, I have hope for Vivek. I think he's ran a really good campaign. The last couple of days, he's floundered a little bit with some of his answers here, but he ran a very effective campaign. And he was the opposite of what Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis did. And I think he's going to have a really strong night because he did such a good job this last, several months in Iowa. Can we get go ahead, Tyler?
And I would just say this. It's going to be very interesting. I think my analysis that we're going to talk about with Charlie and Jack tonight is we're gonna talk a lot, and we're gonna be live for about 3 hours. So if you go on Rumble, we should be live on the homepage. Go to Charlie Kirk or Jack's homepage to watch tonight. But I think my analysis is this. It's very simple, which is if Vivek has a larger than expected night, he is going to become the target of many. If it takes away seemingly from Trump, then Trump's going to go in heavy. If it doesn't take away from Trump and it embarrasses DeSantis, I think there's going to be some lean in on Vivek. But look, I mean, this is at the end of the day. I think what you're also going to see is this tonight is going to change the trajectory for New Hampshire. So if people don't drop out after tonight, depending upon what shakes out here is going to ultimately, I think, change people's votes for New Hampshire. And usually what that does is it consolidates between the more conservative and the more establishment figure, which means that DeSantis If he comes in fourth place, he's totally toast. I would be surprised if he doesn't drop out before New Hampshire, to be honest with you. If he comes in third place, he probably sticks around for New Hampshire. But Vivek beats Ron DeSantis. That's gonna be a big story. That's gonna be a giant story. And depending upon how much he took away from Trump, meaning did that boost Nikki to 22% or higher, right? He's gonna get a lot of attacks. If he's kind of just chilling real close to DeSantis in fourth place, he probably is gonna get out from underneath that. But DeSantis's voters might end up abandoning him for Vivek, split between Vivek and Nikki. I think that's what you're ultimately going to see a little bit more of. Then I wouldn't be surprised if Vivek picks up a little bit more steam ahead of New Hampshire, regardless of what the outcome is tonight, with the expectations that Vivek is going to get a little bit more vote, maybe than what's being polled at. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But Vivek is going to be the guy that a lot of people are going to be talking about, I think, this whole next 2 weeks.
I hope what doesn't happen, though, is if Vivek does have a very good night, and like you said, DeSantis drops out, and there's some core people that go from DeSantis over to Vivek, that Vivek now becomes an anti-Trump alternative to Trump. And that really ruined, Ted Cruz. And it took Ted Cruz a while to bounce back from that. But like I said, we're going to see.
If Vivek's smart, he's going to pad himself against that. The tough part will be is if Trump starts attacking him on the regular. We've seen this last week, Trump going in hard on Vivek and saying, hey, this is kind of a joke, how dare he say something like this? And I think the analysis from many was right, that was kind of a misstep on his part. He shouldn't have taken that approach. He should have just kept doing what he's been doing, which is, talk to the grassroots, talk about the grassroots, don't engage, try to keep Trump's name out of your mouth, because it's not really, part. You can say, look, I support the guy and what's happened to him is wrong, the way that he's gone about his campaign so far. But for him to say, look, I'm the best choice for Trump because, of all these things, he should have known that was going to irritate, the Trump supporters and everything else. And so I do think that was kind of a mistake. And, he has an opportunity from this point to decide, is he going to go down more of that road, or is he going to back off that and make a better campaign plea? Because I don't think that's the best campaign plea to get Trump supporters to support you. I think the better campaign plea is like, look, I may not be the guy, Trump's the guy. I may not be the guy this time around, but I want you to get to know me and trust me and hopefully love me and know that I can be your voice for you, especially for a lot of younger people, because now millennials are the largest voting bloc. There's a ton of millennials that are really not super stoked about Trump, not super stoked about Biden for sure. We're seeing the poll numbers come out. And so a lot of millennials are thinking about RFK right now, right? So a guy like Vivek becomes really interesting for the future, regardless of if he gets nominated or not, because he's one of the guys that can go, oh, if you're thinking about RFK, you should be thinking about me. So instead of saying, if you're thinking about Trump, you should be thinking about me. I think the entire campaign plea, if I was his guy in his war room, I'd be like, look, Vivek, you need to start going to millennials. Forget about everybody else. Yeah. Even older people don't like Trump, right? Like, they're going to split between Nikki and other people, and you and other people. But, my plea would be, try to win the millennial vote. Try to go to millennials and say, hey, look, you don't have to go out and campaign against Trump. You may semi-like Trump. You like what Trump did, but just know I'm here and you're getting to know me. And if you quietly vote for me, cool. If you don't, I hope I was like your second spot in your head, and I've earned your trust because, I'm going to be around for the next 30 years.
John, I want to get your take before we have to move on to the next topic. You've been to a lot of Vivek events. Do you think there's, is there like a younger Republican millennial draw to Vivek? Maybe because they do like Donald Trump, but they want somebody new. You've been to a bunch of Vivek stuff in Iowa. Do you think that that's kind of the sentiment, that there might be some more younger turnout for Vivek?
Yeah, 100%. any Vivek you go to, or any Vivek event you go to, there's way more younger people than any other candidate. Being a college student, I'm around college kids. I'm around, guys that don't even, especially young men. He really appeals to young men, especially people that don't even know anything about politics. One of my roommates, he doesn't really care about politics. He loves Vivek. Thinks he's great. I think the message Vivek is spreading is very good, and it's almost identical to Trump's message. The thing that concerns me is it's not about Vivek. The thing that concerns me is the difference between Vivek supporters, Trump supporters, and then you look at the Haley and DeSantis supporters. If you talk to a Trump supporter, most of them love Vivek. You talk to a Vivek supporter, most of them love Trump. DeSantis and Haley supporters, a lot of them are never Trumpers, and that concerns me because when the election comes, when Trump is inevitably the nominee, I think all the Vivek voters, they're going to go to Trump. I'm worried that a lot of DeSantis voters, a lot of Haley voters, one, aren't going to vote at all. Two, write a name in, or three, vote for Joe Biden. I think, that never Trump mindset is going to hurt the Republican Party a lot. And I think what Vivek's done so successfully is he's gathered supporters without fueling any hate towards Trump. So I think Vivek is changing politics. I think he is the future of conservatism. Not this election probably, but in the next 10 to 20 years, I think Vivek is going to be the star of the Republican Party.
I think I agree with you.
And I would say this about Vivek is, it all depends on how he conducts himself over the course of the next 2 months, right? So if Vivek embraces, a real loser mentality of not understanding the movement, which I don't think he will do, by the way. He's been the only person to listen to us. He comes to all of our stuff. He texts our team very frequently. He asks advice. He shows up to stuff. He's right on a ton of things. He's corrected things, because not everybody has the right positions. They evolve over time. Trump included, right? So there's a lot of people who run for president who have a lot of bad takes to start. And, I'll just tell you this, Vivek he's in the spotlight and may not realize he's in the spotlight for the next month. So if he comes out tonight and he beats Ron DeSantis, that is a massive, massive, massive deal. I mean, Ron came into this entire election as the most popular governor in the Republican Party, bar none, right? And he was a high up on the statistics here of having a real opportunity to challenge Trump. He got decimated by Trump. He has run the worst campaign, but for a guy who is never held office to come out of nowhere, who doesn't even eat meat, he's a vegan, and he's my age, and to run for president is really unexpected. And so he may not feel that way coming in third place, right? He may not feel that way coming in third place or even a very close fourth, but he will be unknowingly the center spotlight of what everybody's most interested in what he does. And so if he chooses to go a bad path, then he's going to write his own story here, which will be a very short one politically. If he decides to be smart, talk to a lot of people, and keep his heart close to the grassroots, and makes good decisions, and he keeps doing what he's been doing, which is saying smart things and sticking to principles, I think you're right. I think he's going to be a mainstay for a long time, and I hope he does, right? Because a lot of people quit and they disappear after they run for president, and they evaporate and they get burnt out, or they spend too much money, or their family gets too annoyed by it and everything else. I hope that he bolsters himself so that the next month basically becomes the reason why he sticks around rather than the reason why he decides to leave.
We are just 20 minutes out from the start of the Iowa caucuses. History being made here tonight. Can we play clip 3, please?
Surprise in Iowa. Someone will do better than expected, and someone will do worse than expected. But we have never seen somebody lose when they have a lead as big as Donald Trump has right now. Now, I'm not telling Trump voters to be complacent. I'm not saying that for that reason. I'm simply saying in the field right now, and he's doing very well. I mean, the former president has a significant lead. Out in New Hampshire, that's the kind of state where if there was going to be some kind of an upset, it would be in the state of New Hampshire. That said, it really depends on how polls are modeling how many moderates and independents are going to turn out. So, for instance, CNN, the University of New Hampshire, we call them bearish. We have these different tranches. They've been in a tranche that has polled Trump low compared to the consensus all cycles. So they had Nikki Haley closer, with Trump having a 7-point lead. The very same day, the Suffolk USA Today poll had Trump with 20-point lead. Clearly movement. There's clear, even in Iowa, it's very clear that Nikki Haley did gain some traction. It's just in Iowa, does she have the organization to really pull off a second place finish? Organization will matter in a caucus. There's no doubt.
Organization does matter. And we're going to find out tonight just how well built all of these campaigns organizations are. The Trump campaign, I have some friends and we know people over there at the Trump campaign, in and out of Iowa all the time. Same exact thing with the Haley. I was just in Iowa last week, and a lot of enthusiasm for Donald Trump. The organization, the groundwork is there. I think the same exact thing goes for Ron DeSantis, as John was talking about. A lot of enthusiasm for Donald Trump, a lot of organization there. DeSantis has pretty much put all of his chips on Iowa, spent a lot of money there. Organization at the end of the day is what wins these campaigns. The campaigns that have somebody in every single precinct, every single county, they have a coordinator there. They've got somebody to remind people to go and caucus. I know when we get John out of here so he can go caucus. It's going to be a big night, and I think it all comes down to organization for these campaigns that probably come in second or third behind Trump. How well organized were they? I mean, you can have the best message in the world, and you can be an effective fundraiser, but if you're not as organized as you should be, caucus goers, to get to the polls, people to make sure that your staffers there to help people if they have questions, watching the roads, what the weather's going to be like in Iowa. This is like my first time ever getting to cover the Iowa caucus. I went there last summer, Turning Point Action did, for the fair. A lot of people take pride in that being the first in the nation. But, there's some people who just got to be reminded, you need to show up at your caucus place. If you're listening to this show right now live, look up where you're supposed to be caucusing right now. It's going to start, in less than 20 minutes. You're the first in the nation to do it. So it's going to be a big night for Donald Trump, I think for the entirety of the conservative movement. John, I'm just going to get your take, man, before you get out of here. You've been with us at Turning Point Action a little over a year now, going into the Iowa caucus. We appreciate you, man. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter. My handle is TPA, as in Turning Point Action. And then John, JOHN, TPA John is my Twitter. I try to post several times a day. So if you want some good conservative content, give me a follow.
And John, who are you going to be caucusing for tonight?
I'll be caucusing for President Trump.
That's what we like to hear, man. I think you're one of thousands of young men across the state of Iowa that will be doing that for President Trump. You guys get to be the first in the nation. We appreciate all the work you do, man. All the work that you and Gloria did last summer leading up to this year, getting people plugged in to their central committee, updating their voter registration, being our boots on the ground in Iowa leading up tonight. You guys did so much work, just for people to be civically engaged in Iowa, turn that place around a little bit so more young folks like yourself and Gloria can help save this country, and it all starts in Iowa. So we appreciate you, man. Thanks for being on.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. Let's save the country.
As always, tpaction.com/chase. You got to chase the vote with us. If you're in Iowa and you caucus tonight after Donald Trump wins, you need to start looking at your time off. We're going to need you to go up to Wisconsin and chase ballots with us. Iowa, yes, it's important. We got to have the caucus happen, but come chasing the vote, come getting out the vote, getting more Republicans, at the polls, getting ballots in the mailbox. Iowa, you got to drive up to Wisconsin. Our team will be happily helping you. We're hiring hundreds of people in Wisconsin to chase the vote. tpaction.com/chase. We're going to need thousands of people in Iowa to head up for a week or a weekend in Wisconsin and Milwaukee and Waukesha, all over the place, all along the, whatever you want to call it, Lake Michigan there to help us chase the vote. We're going to be hiring dozens of people in Wisconsin to manage our Chase the Vote operation. So we need to go to tpaction.com/chase. We also have our coalitions, tpaction.com/coalitions. If you're a farmer in Iowa, if you're a farmer in Wisconsin, anywhere across the Midwest, we need you to be part of our Farmers and Ranchers Coalition. If you're sick and tired of the Green New Deal, I think this is going to be a really good showing in the Iowa caucus where rural Iowans, where farmers, where the agriculture industry stands on these candidates. I think the vast majority of farming and ranching and the agriculture industry is enthusiastically by Donald Trump because he has been so supportive in Iowa. I think in the last budget when Trump was president, $26 billion for Iowa farmers there. I think they're going to have a good showing, but tpaction.com/coalition. The moms in the Midwest, you got to be part of our coalitions to build the infrastructure that we're constantly talking about, the groups to get out the vote, to chase the vote, to clean up voter rolls, to knock doors, to build these substantially long coalitions that are going to mean something to win these elections in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada. tpaction.com/coalitions. And most importantly, tpaction.com/precinct. You're not actually in the Republican Party, folks, unless you're a precinct committeeman. I'll say that until I'm blue in the face. There's going to be thousands of central committeemen in Iowa today showing up at their caucus place to give their vote to who they want to be the next president of the United States. And how, it really works is, the state's 40 delegates in Iowa, that's about 1.6% of Republican delegates nationwide will be allocated to candidates proportionally based on the final vote count tonight. So in pre-caucus polling, former President Trump had an overwhelming lead with Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis neck and neck behind him. And so many of those central committee members in Iowa tonight, after the caucus, they're going to start going directly in to electing their delegates to the Republican National Convention. You also can do that. We're going to have our events in Arizona with the Republican Party. All the local Republican parties are going to be having their legislative district events to get their state delegates to go to the National Convention. That all starts with being a precinct committeeman. In Iowa, it's a central committee member. Arizona, it's a precinct committeeman. In Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, Wisconsin, we need you to be a precinct committeeman. You got to have some skin in the game. Many of these people tonight that are going to be caucusing are also going to be vying to be delegates to the Republican National Convention this summer in August in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But I think that's going to be it for us at Swing State Update. Pre-caucus information. Make sure you join us over at the Charlie Kirk Show live as information and caucus results come in. We are just under 15 minutes for the first beginning of the Iowa caucuses. My prediction, Donald Trump's going to win by 20. We'll see. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, but I think I'm going to be right. 20 points or more for Donald Trump in the Iowa caucus. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next week.